my dear Sitecore family. First of all, a very happy Diwali to you.
Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali.
As you see, there are festivities and decorations here at Horizontal, and we are recording a podcast as a Diwali special. And today it's going to be a discussion between the three of us, myself, Varun, Devanshi, and Meenakshi, and we are going to discuss around the various APIs which we have in XM Cloud. So, let's get started. So, thank you for your time, and let's start the discussions on APIs. So, which is the first API you would like to start, Devanshi, from a discussion standpoint?
Yeah, so Varun, thank you for introducing us and having both of us together.
Yeah.
And
I would say thank you for being inviting me again on your show.
yeah, so if I talk about XM Cloud, it provides out of the box many types of APIs to work with as a integration point of view. If you say there are 4 types of APIs, first is apps API, then delivery API, then deployment API, and content and management APIs.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's start with apps API.
Yeah, of course. If you talk about the apps APIs, we can use it to work with the languages, to manage the languages, then to work with the site collections, to work with the jobs. What do you think?
Yeah. So when you start with working with the API, there are different ways of authentication. So for authentication, Sitecore XM Cloud provides you different ways. So first of all, you have to have client ID and client secret that you can generate with UI. It provides XM Cloud out of the box. When you go to your deploy app, basically whenever you wanted to work with different operations of deploy apps or anything, you have to go to the deploy apps. In traditional, we don't have this deploy app thing. This is new in our XM Cloud, and this is because we will have different kind of APIs.
Correct.
So when you go to deploy app, there would be a section environment variables where you can create the environment variables. So you'll have a drop down where you can have options like you wanted to edit the existing ones or you want to create. So when you create, you have to click on the create button and it would open a good pop-up for you. Yeah, and in that pop-up you'll have options to whether to name this and to provide the description of that, because basically you will have multiple
Client identity
for authentications.
Yeah, that could be of different purposes. So it is always better to provide the good description so that later on you can call by we have created
This is a great point, because it is quite possible we might use the same client ID and secret for multiple various applications, maybe middleware,
different environments as well.
Different environments as well.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to have individually marked and well managed at a location with proper naming and description.
Yeah. And the most important thing to remember, because this happened most of the time with me, the client ID and secret you create, you have to note it down somewhere, because
I remember it happened with me as well.
Won't it available afterwards once we create?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to copy it somewhere, because when you go on the edit one, you can have the client ID, but I don't think so you'll have the secret.
Yes, you have the ID.
Again with the environment name?
Yeah.
Is it different based on the environments?
No, it will show you throughout all your XM Cloud, because your deploy app would be same.
Okay.
But copying that is the important.
Yeah.
And I think one thing important to note here is deploy app, not every user has access, right? So if it is an organization user, they can't have access or they won't have access to the deploy app, right? So it's technically just the organization owner or organization admins who have access to the deploy app. So it is only those who can create this.
Basically, if you see the admins one, users are the one who will be working on this or creating this. Once it is created, client ID and secret, you will have options like in call section where you can provide this client ID and secret, and you can generate a JWT token that will have information of all this thing, or you can create it via Postman as well. And once this JWT token is created, you can use in your deploy app, like as Devanshi mentioned. Uh, if you see like real life scenario where
So
we
let
can
me just hold
use.
up there. Sorry to cut you off. Although the JWT token which you mentioned, if you are doing a new activity, it will be a new JWT token every time.
No, your client ID and secrets are same, then your token would be same.
Correct. So for a given client ID and secret, JWT token will remain the same.
Yeah, and if you wanted to correct this, there would be time to live for this. By default, there is some time to live available. But if you want like to change it or expire it in some time, you have to provide additional information. But otherwise, you can use same token.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sure, you were saying something. Sorry to cut you off there.
No problem. Yep. So once you have that JWT token, you can use whatever use cases you wanted to. So, for example, if you we do have everything available in UI. So, for example, if you wanted to create site, you wanted to create tenant, you wanted to delete the site, you can delete it via GUI. You can directly click and go this. But there are some cases where you wanted to spin up a new site where you wanted to go through deployments, and that's how you wanted to create. So in that cases, you can use this API and create your everything there.
Cool. I think this brings me to a very good point. I mean, quite possible. Even with, let's say, with XM Cloud, we are having, like, we have our own custom microsite application developed on a microsite component module developed. In that case, we could utilize this to just spin up a new website on the same XM Cloud instance in a given tenant,
Yeah.
using these APIs, maybe writing some pipeline in Azure DevOps.
CIC.
Yeah, these are easy to integrate, or you can say the ready to use APIs available through XM Cloud out of the box.
Yep. Cool. Well, let's jump on to the next one. And because I think we are talking about the apps API, which talks a lot about sites, why don't we go to the deploy API next?
Yeah, so in the deploy API, that is mainly responsible for the deployment. So you will get the API which is related to deploy app, deploy portal, who has the access with the admin rights. Those are mainly accessible for these kind of APIs.
Right.
So you can work with the environments while using this deploy API. You can work with the projects, and you can also get the list of the deployments you have fired or you are working on.
Yeah, like name suggests, it is basically for the deployments. You wanted to deploy your project, your site management, basically.
Even through from which repository you have deployed the deployment, you will able to find this information through the APIs, and you will able to find the full Swagger page. The Swagger page, in that the APIs are listed with the what do you say? You need to authenticate yourself, and you will be able to execute the Swagger API one by one. You will get the description, what the request mode you need to pass, what the get request, and everything you will be able to figure out through the collection already provided by XM Cloud.
Yep. So where could we really use the application of deploy? I mean,
CI/CD pipelines. If you wanted to deploy a project, or you wanted to link a repo, and from where this should be deployed, there that could be a good use case for this.
and well, I just thought of a use case which I feel could help the business team in a way. Let's say developing maybe a status page or something, because some organization owners who might be stakeholders, a business stakeholder, they are not organization admins because they should not have access to that particular location, and probably we just develop a page or status page, something like that.
So you will be
Somewhere.
able to see the deployment status,
Correct.
what has been done during that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you could basically just give them statuses of deployments on various environments, just that, and how much it has run, or just kind of statistics overall. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like best use case we can use this kind of it.
And now if I really club both, the deploy app as well as the apps API, I think a lot can still be made. Like, think about it. If somebody wants to spin up a complete system or an ecosystem with multiple sites and like project getting multiple environments and multiple sites. I think everything can be done using Azure DevOps or Sitecore CLI using these APIs.
Basically, whatever we can do via manual actions that
Yeah.
could be automated with the help of all the APIs available with this.
And you can save that much of money.
Yeah, your automation, everything could be automated.
Cool. So let's get on to the other ones, which is management and content API you mentioned.
Yeah. So there is we talked about the deployment perspective, and now the next part is we can talk about the content and the authoring APIs. That the authoring API is mainly referring the item related activities where you can create the item, delete the item. You can perform some activities on the item, the main CRUD operation or the manage operation.
Basically, the mutations.
Yeah, you can say so. Mutations operations, that is what do you say, the triggered by the authoring APIs.
Sure.
Similarly, you have a content API where you can get the content of the item through the content APIs. There's no much difference in the URL if you are getting. If I talk about the URL, you will see for the authoring APIs, you will see authoring inside the URL, and for the content APIs, you will see the layout kind of thing to get the information from the URL.
Correct.
Yeah, like Devanshi mentioned. Let's talk about the content one first. So, like previously, we used to have web database and the master. So, if you have published an item and you wanted to know whether it is published or the changes are not reflected, when you wanted to see the web database, here in XM Cloud, we'll query it on the edge.
Correct.
Because it provides out of the box CDN to you. So if you wanted to know what content it is showing or whether it is published or not, you will be querying on the edge part. So when you query on the edge part, you have to provide a token for it. The token you can find in your environment, and the GraphQL URL, like playground URLs as Devanshi mentioned, it is also available. So basically, there are two options: whether you wanted to query things on your CM site, on your, let's say, master database, and other one is whether you wanted to query it on the edge thing or your web database. So when you are querying on the CM site, you have to pass a API key that you can find in your settings and site features. There would be API key available. So if you pass that API key and query things, you will be querying through your master database. And when you are passing the token, which is available in your this deploy app, that means you are querying it in your edge database, and you can basically find the difference. And these APIs are generally kind of you will be able to query on the published content data and everything.
So mainly you talk about the production one, right? Production ready content. Yeah.
Correct. While the authoring APIs we just discussed, it is kind of so you will be available to query it through the things playground, and you can use it. But what happens if you wanted to create a Sitecore item? But because there could be scenarios where you wanted to create item dynamically on your Sitecore item. For example, news are coming. You wanted to create new news items or blogs, everything in your Sitecore tree. So in that case, authoring APIs would be helpful. And that are basically called as mutation queries. So you wanted to create item, delete item, you wanted to upload a media item, you wanted to create a template, anything that would be part of your mutations.
Right. Let's talk about both these things. So I have a few questions here. As an example, again with this delivery APIs or the content APIs, which we are basically getting content of edge. We mentioned that there will be an API key which you can use. That API key can be available from settings you mentioned. So that settings is accessible from the deploy app.
Settings is
you mentioned the API key is available from settings.
you can find it in your Sitecore tree.
Okay, in the Sitecore tree you can find it. Okay, cool. Next, there will be a client ID and secret required for this.
No, basically you don't need to for querying the items, like the content.
You don't need.
You don't need.
Okay.
But for authoring, you need.
Cool. That is exactly where I was.
Yeah.
Okay. So for authoring, you need it.
Yes.
But for the
When you are working with
It
the item
is-
level to get the information, at that time we don't need client ID and client secret. I think.
Yeah. So in
Yeah.
you can understand it like this way. If you wanted to have select queries, because GraphQL is kind of queries, you will
Correct.
be using the query language.
Yeah.
In that terms, you don't need the token or anything. You just have to pass the token which is available in your delivery. You just have to click on show and you will
Sure.
be able to pass that. But in terms of authoring APIs, where you wanted to create items or like process things, that
Perfect.
in that case you need to generate a token. And
Sure. So the same token, the client ID and secret that we generated earlier, let's say at the time of apps, can the same token work?
it is not like you can say you should use your token for a particular purpose,
I
not
agree.
for everything.
I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
it should not be a generic token.
Yes.
It should always be a specific token,
Yeah,
and you
correct.
just make sure that this token is for this activity and only used for that activity.
Yeah. If you take an example in our project, we do have some middlewares, different things. In that, we are not using same token for the different middlewares because that will help you to limit the access. Because if you give everything to one particular thing, think of a situation where that token is like exposed or something. Your entire environment and everything is in your hands.
Yeah.
So
separate.
it is better to create a token which would have some restricted thing and it will do certain operations only.
Cool. You mentioned regarding middleware. Would you like to share kind of on a general basis? you
Yeah,
know,
like
what?
the project we are working on is kind of OC thing, Order Cloud one. So we do have middleware setup because in Order Cloud you will definitely need a middleware because
Correct.
here in XM also we have APIs. There also we have APIs. We should have some processing power that would be done through middleware. So in that middleware we need to pass the tokens or whatever APIs are giving to us. The client ID of Order Cloud, the client IDs of XM Cloud, everywhere.
Right. So are you like maybe you are collating some data and then putting it out on
Yeah.
the rendering host or the website,
Mm-hmm.
like taking data from both the locations and putting it out?
Yeah.
So in that case, it's not just the layout service data from components of XM Cloud. It is also these APIs that you build. And then do you have any data, like because you mentioned so much about management APIs, do you have any APIs where you write or like update content inside XM Cloud items?
Yes, and it is. I guess you need to allow your playground because the playground URL, like Devanshi mentioned, for your content and this APIs is
Yeah.
different, while authoring is different. In authoring, you'll have authoring in your URL, and that playground expose thing would not work until and unless you make it like allow something. And to allow something, you need to. I don't remember the exact word, but it is something expose playground. The variable.
Sitecore expose playground, something like
Yeah,
that. You need
yeah.
to make
So
it
there
true,
is, there
right?
is basically some
Some variable.
parameter or some
Yes.
setting.
Yep.
Yes.
And that variable should be set to true before you start working with the authoring APIs.
So can I say by default in XM Cloud that is false?
Yes.
Okay. How can I set it to true?
Yep. We do have two options because everything could be done in multiple ways. So first way could be with the traditional way we used to follow, that is patching.
Yes.
Our favorite one, anything we wanted. If you directly see in your show config, it will show you whether that variable is set true or false. You can see that variable is false. If you wanted to patch it through our traditional way, you can patch it. But with XM Cloud, it is recommended that you should avoid patching things because it is like in general way.
Yeah.
So the other way is you can directly change things on your XM Cloud, because when you are creating credentials and working everything on there, there is one section called as environment variables, where you, if that variable is already present, just take the value and you can add it true false. If not present, you can just add it and redeploy your environment, because when you do patching, you anyway are going to deploy and patch it. But when you are creating it via GUI, then also you have to redeploy your environment, and that then
for that setting to apply, a variable to take place. And again, environment variables. So I believe it will be in deploy app.
Yes,
So it can only be by owners or admins can access it.
Yes, yeah.
Cool. Well, I think the delivery API, the preview and delivery APIs, what are the cases or what are the use cases that we might need to use those apps or APIs?
Yeah, so delivery API, then the content and authoring APIs, these all are interrelated mainly. Okay, so the delivery API, whenever your site or content is production ready, sorry, at that time you can work with the delivery APIs. Your endpoint would be referring to the edge and URL, and you will access the site related information. You will get the item related information.
Yeah.
You can get the site collection as well. If you wanted to get the number of sites inside the tenant, you will able to get such item related information through the delivery API.
Delivery, I think delivery is right. So it will basically get the item specific information.
Yes, yes.
But if I talk of use case,
Mhm.
where can it be really used? Like,
Okay, if let me talk about one component. Let's say it is a breadcrumb component. Okay, we have in the headless out of the box content resolvers are available. Okay,
correct.
if you get the for the breadcrumb component, what you need exactly, the number of pages which is inside your content tree, the page title you need as a part of breadcrumb. Okay, and if you are fetching component data which is of breadcrumb through layout query, at that time you will get the full site's information. Okay, in depth
Right.
way.
Yep.
The layout data would be too much high at that time. Okay,
Yeah, a lot of data, a lot
Yeah,
of content.
okay.
available.
so for to overcome such problems, we can use the GraphQL query. Okay, through GraphQL you can query the specific page title through the site
Complete
home.
list. Yeah, complete list.
Yeah, and you will get the shorter list which you want as a part of your breadcrumb component compared to the layout data.
Cool.
Okay. And this is the best example to work with a GraphQL query. You need the required data. Okay.
Right. So instead of writing that query inside the component and executing it and identify if it is getting the real data,
Yeah.
you write it in the playground
Yeah.
using the delivery API and identify what content it is giving.
Yeah, you can before exposing it to the production, you can paste your query through the preview API. Okay, you pass the API key as a header, then pass your body there, and if you execute, you will get your required output there. Okay, once that is you are sorted with your output, you will copy paste that query on the rendering itself, and you will find the field for GraphQL query, content GraphQL query.
Correct.
At that place you put that query. There are some out of the box variables available, tokens. You will say $database, API keys, $context item. You can use these variables as well for your GraphQL query.
To get dynamic data.
Yeah.
Because if it is data source or if it is context
Yeah.
item, you will require those
Yeah.
parameters to be added in some way. And Sitecore initiating those
Yeah.
variables.
Yeah. And in this case, if I talk about a breadcrumb component, we don't need any data source, right?
It's interesting to see how nicely the architecture has been built by Sitecore. Even thinking of plugging in GraphQL to get the data. I mean, it is so efficient, right? Like how it directly just merges and it becomes one thing with components and all. So it's really interesting to see how it is. Anyways, any last minute thoughts on APIs or anything that we just discussed? No?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that was Devanshi and Meenakshi for us. And again, a very happy Diwali to all of you. If you have any questions, if you have any points related to APIs, feel free to contact us. Have a look at this particular podcast. Let us know your views. And if you have any queries or questions, feel free to contact us on LinkedIn. And well, that is it for today.
Yeah. Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali. Cheers.